Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for being here, taking this time to be with me and to hear a little bit more about Ayurveda. Lit a candle for us all and for the wider group. So thank you also to those who've signed up and registered, and hope you enjoy the recording. So today, I know there's a few here that don't know very much about Ayurveda, so forgive me if you are quite well versed, but I really feel I just want to give a general overview, because I'm not sure for those who are beginning to understand Ayurveda, but when I first started learning about it, I welcome. I, on many ways, I felt, but what are they telling me? I know all this. It's so obvious. But on the other hand, it was like my head was turning upside down and I was being asked to look at life and well-being and everything in a completely different way. So I'm hoping for those who do know something that just to hear it again, I had to keep hearing it again and again and again. And this real key thing that we are nature. We are nature. And I think we know, obviously we know that and we can feel it on many levels, but then you can begin to feel it on a deeper level and live even more sort of deeply in tune with nature and the rhythms of life. And I think sadly, how society is, it's really made sort of pulled us away from that. And I think most of us know that. But this time of year, winter, which is the Vata season, is the season that we go against our nature, our own true natures, the most, because Vata season, if you look at what's going on in nature, really it's the time for hibernation, for going inwards, for replenishing and restoring on a really sort of deep level and planting seeds for the spring. And of course, it's the time that we have Christmas, New Year, we're out, we're busy, we're rushing. And so come January, we can all feel quite depleted simply because we're not really living in a way that we're designed. It's as simple as that. So what Ayurveda is, to me, it was like finding the guidebook for living, because I was like, gosh, it's just so obvious. It's so natural. Why are we not taught this at school? And as I say, it's this key that we are nature, and it gives us this beautiful framework of lifestyle. It's huge. So the lifestyle and the preventative stuff is just one small corner of it, but really that's what I'm focusing on today. And really just simply it's like ways to look after ourselves that can make us feel perhaps better than we do. And within that, it's beginning to understand about the doshas and our own constitution, because what's very important about Ayurveda, although there is great knowledge and substantial things to understand, at the end of the day, it's about your own unique constitution and who you are. And the fact that what works for one person certainly doesn't work for another. And not only that, what you might need at one time of year, you might not need another time of year or a different time in your life. So by really beginning to understand what the Ayurvedic perspective, you can then bring that knowledge in and apply it to yourself at any one time. So, and the other really important, so there's lots of sort of key things. The other key thing is it's what I call a conscious way of looking after our well-being. So it's really about tuning in to ourselves, really deeply listening to ourselves and thinking, okay, how do I feel right now? What do I need? And this is a real key part of it, because then we understand ourselves more deeply, and in over time really sort of much more quickly get to know what we need to bring ourselves back into balance. So all the time, it's about bringing ourselves back into balance and keeping the equilibrium so that we can maintain as much as possible physical health, mental health, emotional health, and spiritual health. So that's just sort of the overview there. And what I want to touch on now is this whole huge concept that we are nature. And Ayurveda understands that basically all the building blocks of life are built on 5 elements. And the elements are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And within that, they have created 3 energies, which are called the doshas. And I think many of you here know about the doshas. We've already been working with them. And that is the Pitta dosha, which is really all about fire. And if you are a Pitta constitution, you have a lot of drive. You can often be a leader. You can be greatly focused. But if you have a Pitta imbalance or there's too much Pitta, that's when we can become really inflamed, angry, and critical. And that's how the imbalance shows. That's only part of it, but that is part of it. And then there is the Kapha dosha, and this is earth and water. And if you're Kapha, you're usually have a larger frame, heavier in bones, not necessarily weight, and possibly sort of slower to move, and that really lovely sort of Mother Earth energy. So it's really grounded because there's a lot of earth. However, when that goes out of balance, we can become stagnant and heavy and lethargic. And then the third dosha is the Vata dosha, and that's what we're talking about today. And this is the energy of air and movement. And when that is in balance, we are creative, we're quick thinking, we can really adapt well. But when that goes out of balance, and if you just really consider too much air and movement in the system, we can become scattered, anxious, and ungrounded. And it's such a huge topic. I'm going to try and keep it really simple. So all of us have all of those doshas within us, but we also will have them in different proportions. So we'll have our own unique constitution. I do one-to-one consultation. So if it's something you're interested in finding out about, I can work with you and we can find out your constitution. And then I particularly focus on food and nutrition in that and what's good for you at this moment based on your constitution and any current imbalances. So that's one thing. Our constitution is important because that is an important thing to take into consideration to know what we might need at any one time. And the way I can illustrate that, I'm a Pitta dosha. And so what I have to often be careful of is that I don't get too much heat in me. And so now I know certain foods that are going to really aggravate me, certain foods that are really going to support me. And it's something I can just mindfully keep an eye on and actually make additions to my diet to hopefully help that not go too far out of balance. So that's the constitution. So the second thing that we need to consider is what's out of balance at this precise moment. So it can be that you've changed jobs. Let's say you've just changed jobs. It's really stressful and you're a bit all over the place. That can show as a Vata imbalance. So if you know that, you can then work to balance Vata at the same time. So I'm not going to go into this too much, but just to say that. So then the third thing we need to consider is the seasons and what time of year it is. Because as we are an integral part of nature, we will very much be affected by the season. And what we need to really thrive in one season is quite different to what we might need in another season. And you'll all say, well, yeah, of course we know that. It's hot. When I'm hot, I want to eat salads and light things. But when it's winter, I want sort of comfort food and things like that. And so all of these things we know, but Ayurveda really gives us a framework to really deeply know how to work with it and to really support us really going through the seasons in a way that's going to be most supportive. So as I say, at the moment, we are in the Vata season. Can anyone tell me what the Vata season is? What's the two elements that are part of Vata? Can anyone remember what I said? It's movement, so air and space. Okay, so it's connected to this sort of moving, spacey energy. Okay. And if you think about it, so the Vata season is winter time. So really that is as of sort of November through to February. And if we just think about what's happening in nature, obviously it's getting really cold and dry. And the leaves are falling off the trees. And similar things are happening to us in that we will get drier. We will obviously need to be warmer because of the cold. And during this time, it's actually good for us to build up a little bit more layer as we're eating, so to eat heavier things. But then again, when we come to February, we're going to be changing again. But at the moment, we're just going to look at the Vata season. And one really, really simple principle in Ayurveda is the principle of like for like and opposites. Okay, so if we look at the Vata season, the qualities of the Vata season and the Vata dosha are light, dry, cold, rough, mobile, and subtle. So you can sort of think of the winter wind. That's real Vata energy, that sort of whipping about cold wind. Okay. And when we feel that extreme in ourselves, then we can feel really scattered. We can feel anxious. We can feel ungrounded. We can feel depleted, dry, and just not ourselves. And so we're going to be affected by this in the winter. Now, there are certain things that we will naturally be doing because, naturally, as I say, we're going to be feeling, I need to keep warm, I need more food and everything. But the simple principle in Ayurveda is that we need to give ourselves the opposite of those qualities. So anything light, we need heavy. So with our meals, which we do naturally, we need heavy comfort food meals in that time. So we're looking at things like roots that are really sort of going to ground us. We are looking at more stew-like food because then it's moist, so it brings more sort of lubrication. And the whole idea of slowing down. And this is what gets really extreme for us at this time of year, especially if you've had a busy Christmas period and not allowed enough time out. It's this sort of overload of busyness and not allowing enough rest. Because in the winter time, just like nature's doing, really, it's time for us to hibernate. Okay. So, and within that, then, I'd like to look at January, because already we've come through a lot of winter. And as we come to January, it's almost like this pivotal point that we're in the deep midwinter. So we can be feeling that depletedness quite a lot. And really out there, it's still cold enough to really sort of chill us to the bone. But what is happening is that underneath, this moisture is accumulating beneath a frozen surface. So right now, our body no longer needs to build fat, and it's actually beginning to shed fat. And also our cravings, and just tune in because you may notice this, will be gradually shifting from sweet and heavy to lighter, more bitter and sour tastes. Just this should be happening naturally, depending on how in tune you are with what's going on. And so because that's happening in nature, what's happening in our body is that actually there's less blood flow because our capillaries are constricting to preserve the heat. So our skin can look pale and dry, and we can not always look our healthy selves. And our heart rate's sort of slowing a bit. And basically, it's sort of coming to this whole hibernation thing. And what's really important is that this isn't laziness, because we can think, oh, hang on, I should be doing this, that, and that. But actually, if we're really tuning in with nature and really listening to ourselves, it's really, really important to have downtime and rest. So in Chinese medicine, January is what they call the most yin time of the year. So it's the real restorative time to rebuild tissues, to rest, and to reflect inward before we spring back into action, sort of not until really mid-March. Okay, so that's just sort of the overview of what's going on there. And now I'm just going to share some of the things that Ayurveda recommend to support us to alleviate, coming out of balance too much. So as I say, first of all, this time of year really is the most beautiful invitation to plant seeds. And it's a bit of a paradox because, it is the dead of winter, but it really is the most potent time for planting seeds. So, and not just in the earth, but in our consciousness. So if you can allow time for contemplation, for how you'd like the future to be, then it's a really important time to just allow this free thinking so that this can be planted in you for when you're ready to come out in spring. So whether that's journaling for you, whatever it is, but just to really allow space around what you're doing to allow this lovely time for dreaming, if you like, and considering what things you'd like to bring into your life in the future. And food is, for me, it's one of the key ways to really help us stay in balance. And really what is key at the moment is still the Vata diet. So for anybody who doesn't know what a Vata diet is, and when I teach food, I'm really teaching the principles. So everything that I'm saying, it's flexitarian. So whether you're vegetarian, whether you're vegan, whether you eat meat or fish, it's the same principles. It's slightly different, but it's the same principles. And that is during the Vata season, you really need heavy grounding food. And as I say, sort of November up to now, it's even okay to put a little bit more weight on because it's very, just gives us substance, and it just helps us, to really be where we need to be. So that can look like any sort of comfort food, really. Sort of lovely warm broths, vegetable soups. If you eat meat, like chicken soup is a real ultimate. And things like dates and nuts, all these sort of heavier types of foods are really, really important. And rices, and even it's the time of year that you can most get away with, your pastas and your bread and your heavier things. And then the other thing that's really important this time of year is warming spices. So ginger, turmeric, black pepper, cinnamon, all of these really give us the nurturing and the depth that we need to just really stay grounded. And one of the key foods for this time is ghee, because ghee is clarified butter. Oh, here's Sarah. I think she thought it was 8 o'clock. I'll just stop for a moment. Welcome. I'm going to keep going, Sarah. I think you probably thought it was 8, but it was 7:30. But it's lovely to have you here. Thank you. Where am I up to? Yes, spices are really, really important as well. And for anybody who is interested in knowing more about Ayurvedic food, I'm about to open registration for a Vata balancing cookery, which will be on the Saturday, the 7th of February in the afternoon, and we have the opportunity to cook together. So yes, food is really, really important. But the one thing I'm going to say for January is like this tipping point that we may begin to feel that we need lighter food, that if you're beginning to feel quite sluggish and heavy in yourself, then maybe go for the less heavy roots. So things like parsnips and turnips are less heavy, and bring some bitter things in, because really we're beginning to think about cleansing. Not quite yet, but soon. So with our grains, we're looking more towards quinoa, millet, and buckwheat over rice. So they're just lighter. So we're just gradually going into this idea of beginning to lighten, but only in tune with what feels right for you. Okay. And then gradually, as January goes on, but more towards the end of January, is the one time really that sauerkraut, kimchi, all of those pickledy things are good for us. So we wouldn't go with those in summer, but this time of year, that's really good for you. And more sort of sour foods that really moisten the glands and even they sort of soften things so that things can start moving in us. And also things like natural yogurt, kefir, kombucha, that sort of thing. Great for this time of year. And equally, so we begin to have less heavy breads and wheat and dairy, and we're still not having raw food, but you probably will notice that any sweet and fat cravings will actually ease off now. That's the natural thing to happen. And soon you'll probably be wanting sort of fresher things like grapefruit and oranges and things like that. Okay, so that is food. Just wait for one moment. It's quite a lot of information. I hope is everyone doing okay? Yeah. And then I'm just going to go on for a few practices. So the other thing that's really great, well, it's been great all Vata season, is Abhyanga, which is the Ayurvedic oil massage, and it's oil massage. And it's very, very simple, but it really supports our nervous system. And actually, what I didn't mention before, so the Vata dosha is completely linked to the nervous system. If you can imagine this idea of too much movement in the body, that's going to really make the nervous system feel all over the place. So all of these practices and the foods that we're bringing in to balance Vata will also support the nervous system to feel more settled and grounded as well. So with self-massage, just take a kitchen oil. So sesame oil is a real favorite. If anybody knows that they're a pitta dosha or they've got quite a lot of inflammation, you're better off with a less heating oil, even like coconut oil, although that's quite cooling. And simply, it's just taking some oil warmed in your hands and just really long, simple strokes, just up your body, all over your body. But I'll go into that another time. And then other things, I mean, it's also obvious, really, but rest as medicine. So really, this trying to get into bed before 10 and then allowing yourself to wake up naturally with sunrise and really just trying to get out in sunlight in the morning, whatever time that is for you, and really allowing time of rest, just absolutely doing nothing when you can. So really it's this hibernation medicine and really working with it. And this time of year, it's also can be really important for a respiratory care, because obviously this is the time of year that we often can get colds and stuff like that, because our mucus can be building up from, you know, the heavier foods through the beginning of winter. So it can be simple things like breath work or using a neti pot. I'm not going to go into these things now, or nasya oil, which is just oil in the nose. All of these things can help move things around. And movement wise, yoga always good, but quite gentle still. So nothing too activating, you know, quite grounding, walking in nature, swimming, those sort of things, really sort of grounding, gentle movement. And then, as I say, this inner work of contemplation, planting seeds, and really just having time of self-honesty of, you know, what needs to change, what intentions you may have, and just really being thoughtful about what seeds that you're planting. I'm going to leave it there. The one thing I will just add is just about essential oils, because healing through the senses is a huge thing in Ayurveda. So I've talked about the abhyanga and the touch, obviously taste is the food, and smell is another wonderful way to really support balance and especially support our nervous system and really balance our emotions more than anything. And essential oils can be a wonderful ally for this. And if you'd like to know more about this, I've got a vetiver workshop coming up on Friday, the 13th of February, where if you sign up for this, you will receive a vetiver oil, and I will go into the beauty of vetiver and its inner soul nature, and we'll do the protocols together. But there are many oils that are really Vata balancing. So vetiver being the key one, and then things like lavender. Most of the woods are going to really ground you. So black spruce, cedarwood. But again, these are things that I will be sharing over time. So I'm going to leave it there and just see what questions come from that, because I think that was quite a lot of information. So we'll just take a moment and see how everybody is. How is everybody?